All right, episode 3.
Episode 3 indeed.
We are going to talk about...
Baclofen.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. Medical side effects.
Psychosis.
From prescription drugs.
They basically overdosed me.
They absolutely did.
The story.
So you got a Baclofen pump. Mm-hmm. How long after your injury?
So I was injured in July and took a trial test of Baclofen around October of 2004, so several months later. And this drug does not work well for everyone. And again, if I had the level of spasticity now to this day that I had then, I don't think I'd be driving. I don't think I'd be moving. I think I would be very limited. Probably wheelchair bound just from wear and tear on my left side. I mean, I've already got that, but it'd be so much worse. So I had a great trial run.
What was a trial run versus a pump? So right now you always have it. So right. What was a trial run?
So this drug is intrathecal, which means, I know these cool, it's not that cool. It's terminology, but it means spinal. So it runs through the spinal fluid. And so they basically just gave me a spinal injection of the stuff, and it coursed through my body. And I remember standing up, and I was like, wow. And what's interesting is if you have spasticity, the amount of spasticity is what your muscles adapt to. So I remember I got it, and I responded very well to it. And I knew that because I could barely stand because those muscles that were now relaxed never got used before. So I could almost barely stand up. So it was amazing.
I'm sure that was very exciting.
It was a neat experience. It was like a new lease on life.
So then once the drug was effective, they decided to give you a pump.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And so November of 2004, I got the pump surgery. It's about the size of a hockey puck, and it's in my right abdomen. And yeah, they had to place it in the exact perfect position. The catheter leads from the pump to my spine. If they put it in the wrong place, it could do things like, minor things like stop my heart.
Oh, little things.
Little things like that. So
not a big deal.
Yeah, and the surgery was successful. I was super upset though, being a 19-year-old, guy, and I was like, "This is awful looking." I was used to
your physique was ruined.
Yeah, and that is a big thing. It's like, I think also more upset just because of everything else that happened already. I was like, another thing. But yeah, I just remember I woke up after the surgery and was like, what is this? I was upset, but it looks like the positive effects outweighed, not having physical
I would
ability.
say having what looks like a hockey puck in your stomach is a lot better than being so stiff that you can't even stand up and having to be in a wheelchair.
I mean, does it look good to you?
I think it's incredibly attractive.
I knew it all these days.
It's actually the only reason I married you.
I figured. That makes sense.
I mean, the guy has a pump, so...
Are there good qualities?
No.
But the pump?
That's it.
All day.
That's it.
All day.
Yep.
That's right.
Made my decision for me. Very easy.
So good.
So how long did it take for them to decide they wanted to up your dose?
Well, they based it on some just tests of spasticity and
how you were responding.
Yeah, how I was responding. So they were at 100 or 200, whatever the levels are, and they were like, oh, okay, looks like you could go up. And so this process kind of repeated every week. I would go in for a check-in, and they would say, you can receive more. There's potential for looser muscles. And so that process went on for weeks. They would come in, raise it 10%, another 10%, sometimes 15%. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That's just how it goes. They want to monitor how you're doing.
Right.
But, yeah.
So when did the benefits stop outweighing the horror that ensued?
Right. So I believe about around late November, I began to feel more depressed.
So had you already been depressed?
Yes, I was already depressed and anxious. I mean, there was a lot to be depressed and anxious about when you go from fully able, etc., to traumatic brain injury. So yeah, I was depressed.
Just sidebar, had you experienced depression before that?
Yes, that is important to note. Yeah, I went through depression through high school, but you know what's interesting is I'm a mentor, and I can see in my kids how they don't know how to articulate necessarily what's going on. They're just not in touch with that part of themselves yet, being introspective and being able to say, I am not feeling good and I need help. Let's talk this over. And that's pretty much how I was when I was a teenager. And so I guess I would go to the psychiatrist or whatever and say, hey, I need this. I'm not feeling good. But I didn't know how to process it myself therapeutically is what I'm saying. But I knew, obviously, I started just feeling more sad. I remember feeling more isolated. And this is an important part to discuss about the Baclofen, is that it gave me a lot of graphic, intrusive thoughts. These weren't necessarily just thoughts, they were images, and they started to appear around December. And I was like, this is interesting. And I just became less and less functional, more in my head, more pain, less engagement with my family or anyone. And that was the sign, and it was getting much worse.
But they were not linking it to the Baclofen.
No. And so it was a pretty bad Christmas. Although I think that year it snowed on Christmas Eve in Houston, which is pretty amazing. I do remember that. So that was a plus.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really getting just so anxious. And so I had intrusive thoughts or songs in my head or just intense anxiety.
And were they continuing to up the dose at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great question. Yes, let's name that one. They continued to up the dose.
Because your body was responding really well.
Correct.
And they weren't making the connection that this was affecting your mind.
Correct. And also important is that there had never been any kind of medical journal that had recorded anything to do with an intrathecal Baclofen dose giving someone these kind of symptoms. Now, Baclofen in the spinal fluid is dispersed in micrograms, I believe, not milligrams. So we're dealing with a completely different dosage here. I believe they had documentation with oral Baclofen and milligrams, but this is
It's a completely different
yeah.
animal.
So they would think like this is not possible. They didn't. Yeah.
Also, how many?
We'll get to that in a second.
How many people? Everywhere we go to get your pump filled, everyone, and any time people see a pump in the medical industry, they always think it's a pain pump because those are common.
Correct.
So a Baclofen pump is really not very common, and a lot of people don't know what that is. And so, how much research was available? There hadn't probably been a ton of people. So having a new side effect, it's not like, well, millions of people have had this and this is crazy. It's like, well, we're still seeing what happens with this stuff.
Right. And it had been around, I believe someone told me, since like late 80s, early 90s. But still,
that's not that long.
No, it's not. And especially considering that not many people get it.
Right.
It's a very niche pump. Like when I go to most doctors or most hospitals, they don't even know what it is. Like,
yeah, even now. And so this is at the time, if you said it was around in the, 80s to 90s, I mean, that you were born mid 80s.
I have to drive 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours outside of Lynchburg just to get a Baclofen refill now.
Right.
I mean, Houston's different. I mean, Houston's the largest medical center in the world. So they had their own Baclofen pump clinic, which was just seeing as where I have to get my pump refilled every 3 months, every 6 months, depending on the clinic. And I've never seen anything close to that before. It's always, there's just some random doctor who's a neurologist who also does this. That's usually what it is. But what I have learned, yes, recently I've seen most Baclofen pumps associated with pain management, And I didn't even know that before. I thought it was when I received the pump surgically. I was like, okay, cool. This is just for people with TBIs.
Okay, so they were upping the dose, and you're
I am walking like a champ. By the way, I am moving so well. It was
yeah.
it was an amazing feeling physically.
What about your arm?
Yes, my arm was much looser than it is now.
Was there any improvement in your hand during that time?
Somewhat. You know, the Baclofen, because they don't want it to interfere with major organs, you're going to, with intentionality, feel the benefit of the drug in your lower extremity. Like, so leg, basically. Mm-hmm. My leg is looser, and it's going to be looser in the arm. That's what they told me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay. I mean, everything was better. I mean, I was walking so fast, so quickly. It was so loose. I mean, it didn't take long for my muscles to adapt, like within a week or two, I guess.
Right.
So,
okay, so the side effects that were happening in your mind, in your brain, how bad did they get?
Well, for a long time, I would still probably rate this. This was the worst 6 months of my entire life. And just being honest here, I've dealt with depression and anxiety. I think I'll, to an extent, battle it in some form or another for life. I mean, there's a lot of ways to overcome it and deal with it and manage it, which is great. But at this time, it was horrific because my head would not stop swirling and swirling, and the intrusive thoughts, the songs in my head, my mind would just not stop. It was like this just barrage of images. I mean, I remember I would just close my eyes just while conscious, and I would just see, like, it almost felt like just hallucinations while I was asleep, like live, like trees or just images, like things moved while I closed my eyes. And it was just this massive mental pressure that would not stop. I wasn't able to sleep. I just never, ever got rest. Ever. And it was, I mean, I remember it would be good to actually talk to my parents about this one because, I mean, I am 19 and I would be lying on the couch with my head in my mother's lap because I just could not even function. I was just in so much mental pain that I would just lay like kind of curled up with my head in my mom's lap. And I'm 19.
So having conversations was like not possible.
I could converse, but I was simply out of commission. My dad tried to take me camping, and I just stayed in the tent the entire time. Yeah, and it would be interesting. If you can't tell, it's difficult for me to describe, and maybe my descriptions don't do it justice. It was just hell. And I've had some intense depression and anxiety before, and this is just nothing has been even close. I mean, it was just, I remember I went to my doctor, and he said, your fear is palpable. I can just see how much pain you're in. And I was so gone. And my parents were looking for solutions, and this came on so rapidly as they were increasing the pump dosage. So they were like, what do we do? What is this? And
it wasn't necessarily obvious to them because you had also just been stabbed in the head. So like, who knows what else was happening in your brain? Where did this come from? It wasn't like only this one thing has changed. So this is obviously it.
That's a great point. And I'm still within the first 6 months of recovering from a traumatic brain injury. The first, let me see. Yeah, I'm just outside of 3 months. The first 3 months are the most important. And it's, this happened July 10th. We're talking like early November, December. That's a great point. Who knows what's going on with my head? Is there something else?
And the doctors were saying there's no way it's the Baclofen.
This wasn't even a consideration at first. They just thought my mental health was deteriorating due to the TBI.
Right.
Because when you have a traumatic brain injury or when you have a TBI, you can never be the same person again. Your personality can change. Your levels of anger can change. You may have had at one point a wonderful sense of humor or just a vibrant personality, and you're just flat for the remainder of your life. You do not know you don't even know what humor really is anymore and cannot communicate it. Maybe you're a vibrant or charismatic person. You have that no longer.
Right.
So it's absolutely tragic. And they were just thinking, hey, maybe that's what's going on, I guess. And so
without knowing where it came from, what happened next?
Well, my parents and doctors agreed that let's try addressing this with psychiatric medication. So they started off with things like Prozac. I think I was already on Celexa or citalopram, same things. And then it was still, the complicated thing about these drugs is that they take 2 to 6 weeks to fully enter your system and have full effect. But they were doing just rapid fire because my parents were just saying, this is progressively getting worse and we desperately need your help. Like there was a point where I was suicidal and they had to take me in and, they're like, all right, well, hide the knives and all that. And then, so they quickly put me on more antidepressants and more anti-anxiety. And then they went to things like lithium and Lamictal. And then that really wasn't working. And so they put me on immediate level 1 antipsychotic drugs, which are those that you treat schizophrenia with, or sometimes, among other disorders, and drugs such as Geodone, Haldol, Zypraxa, Risperdal. I was on all of these. And, oh my gosh, I remember the Geodone, I was just so exhausted from, I could barely even lift my head up. That stuff is so intense.
And did any of these do anything to help, quiet the visions or the sounds or the music or whatever you were seeing in your head? Nothing helped at all?
It helped to an extent, but they at this point had diagnosed me as psychotic because I was so gone. And I remember sometimes the Geodome was the one that curbed it somewhat. I mean, I was still absolutely miserable. And oh gosh, I think I'm getting this term wrong. Tarkinesia or dyskinesia or whatever, when it's a
Tarkive dyskinesia.
Yeah, it's something like that. I forget what the actual term is.
I've heard it on a lot of commercials.
Exactly. Yeah, they have a commercial for every drug in the world.
And I may have said that wrong as well, but something like that.
Do you have tingling toes? We have the drug for you. It's a whole 30 seconds. Yeah, they do everything now. But
and then your side effect are these horrible things. It's like, okay, this might not be worth it.
This antidepressant may cause suicidal thoughts. Homicidal thoughts.
Right.
And you may just deteriorate and or spontaneously combust. They have all that. So I was in with my psychiatrist and I couldn't stop moving. I was just squirming and gripping my hands and kind of doing movements with my mouth and things. I was like, what is going on? He's like, oh, this is a normal reaction to your antipsychotic. And I was like, well, this is wonderful.
Well, and another, sidebar, but you also have Tourette's syndrome.
I do, indeed.
And so this was like Tourette's syndrome on crack.
Yes, that's a funny one. That is so funny you mentioned that. I have no recollection of having tics at this point because I don't even know. I don't know if they took me off I was taking like Adderall back then, I think. That's a great question, but obviously my memory is of the pain, not of the tics.
Sure.
And so it was just terrible. And they had me on 12 medications at once.
Wow.
Yeah. 12 medications, I believe. And it was funny. I was looking at something a few years ago, like through a box, whatever, and I found a script from my doctor at the time. And we had to drive like an hour and a half to see this neuropsych specialist. And yeah, so he had me diagnosed on, and he's also adding and decreasing. So titrate off this, move on this, titrate this down, move down this one.
How do they even know?
One.
They're trying.
They don't. That's why,
they're trying to isolate different.
Exactly.
There's
and that's
no way.
why it is a science. But I have a deep respect for psychiatrists because it's an art as well. And I'm a supporter of psychiatric medication. I've seen people where it is a requirement for them to live a fulfilled and functional life.
Sure.
But it's not everything either. And it is such an art. It can take sometimes years to get something right. Mm-hmm. But they were just rapid fire, adding and taking away these drugs. And anyway, so it just came to a crescendo. I really wasn't getting better. And they were about to institutionalize me.
So what would that have meant for you?
Well, I would have been in a most likely semi-independent residential facility where, since I had suicidal ideation, it probably would have gone further down the line to means, intention, and plan.
Sure.
That's the reason why I probably would have eventually ended my life. It was that bad. And at this point, my mom, she was like, I know what kind of people are in there. There's drug users and everything. He doesn't need to be around that. And I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, whatever. And I was terrified too. I mean, who would want to, let's think about this real quick. So I have a traumatic brain injury in July. It's like, by this point, it's April of 2005, like less than a year later. And I am diagnosed as psychotic. And I'm about to be institutionalized. Plus everything else that happened. It was just the worst thing ever at that time. But my mother, just bless her. And I'm so grateful because she was the only one that would say to the doctors, what about the Baclofen?
Right. She went to battle for you.
She absolutely did. And this is just, I can never, ever give my mother enough credit for this. And she absolutely battled for me. Because you have to understand, if they don't have a journal or any research that shows this Baclofen pump can cause this at times, they're not going to try it. And then you have to battle the insurance company. Mm-hmm. Anyone who knows anything about insurance companies, it's like, yeah, we'll process that within the next 2 years. And it's just like pulling teeth. So just a terrible situation. But I don't know. God, my mother, her tenacity, just everything happened. And, my doctor, I remember, so this is a guy who had a medical degree from Yale. He had a philosophy degree from Northwestern. Brilliant man. These are top-notch doctors in the country. And he was like, right. You have about less than a 1% chance of this. That's why it's not even feasible, really. But my mom persisted, and they somehow got me back into the same hospital, Tier Hospital in Houston. And they had me in there for about 1 week, and they were like, oh, okay, he's getting a little bit better. And I remember feeling better. But then...
So what did they do? Did they dial back the Baclofen to barely any, or like what? How did they do that?
Yeah, so with Baclofen, you have to titrate down on the dosage slowly. This is actually a very dangerous drug. If I just stopped right now, mm-hmm. There's a pretty good chance of death.
Well, and that's why your pump has an alarm.
Right. Yes, it does.
That you can hear that if it gets too empty, it will go off and let us know.
And it did go off that one time. I had one time in 20 years where it went off, and the alarm in my head was going off as well. I was like, oh my God. Because, yeah, they will kind of like, I've heard stories about like doctors or whoever like tracking some people down who have pumps. Like somehow, some way, they just will like go to their door, knock, and they're like, "Hey, you like." They'll go track them down because they'll die if they just stop this pump. But anyway, so that's what they had to do in the hospital. Though they had to slowly titrate it, and I remember feeling a little bit better, and the doctor's like, "Oh, okay, he's feeling a little bit better." My mom again came to battle, and she was like, "No, he is not feeling that much better. We just saw him yesterday, and he's crazy still,
right. It's not.
And so, like, absolutely not. He is just a shell of himself still.
Right.
And so,
wait, one question too.
Right.
Were you off of all of the other drugs by then? Did they take you off of those before they started?
That's a great question. I don't recall that actually. I don't recall. By that point, they were so much just the spaghetti on the wall type thing. But I don't remember whether they took me off any of those drugs. Mm-mm. But I was on antidepressants, anti-obsessive, like OCD. I was on anti-anxiety. mood stabilizers, and a number of different levels of antipsychotics. So I had the whole gamut. But no, I don't remember that. But all I know is that they were titrating me down. And by the next week, I really started to feel much, much better.
Wow. How long did it take them to acquiesce to your mother's request to start bringing it down?
I think it was within 1 month.
Yeah, but she had to fight for that long.
She did.
For them to even try it.
She did. And I just remember her making phone calls, like hours, to insurance companies, harassing the doctors.
She'll downplay it though. When
she
you ask
would.
her about it, she's like, "Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
do that much." Yeah, no,
It wasn't.
she was
that
like a
much.
lioness fighting for her cub.
Yes, she was, and she would still do it.
No,
She'd do it to this day,
100%.
no doubt.
She's a feisty one.
She's a spicy one. That's
Yeah.
indeed. Yes. So grateful beyond. But yeah, so
Very quickly, it started to turn around.
it did, and there was also a new lining of silver, a new silver lining in this whole ordeal. So, and this involves my neuroplasticity happening and my cognitive faculties coming back once I became sane again.
Wow.
And this is a cool story. This is just an absolute gift from God. So I remember my father came into the hospital one night to just visit. And this is while I'm in my second week at the hospital, titrating still. And he brought out a book called 1776 by David McCullough. And he started reading. And I was just sitting there listening. And he must have been reading for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And you have to remember that before this time, I couldn't process what I was, things like conversations or reading or writing. And so, but after 10 or 15 minutes, it was like this light of understanding just dawned. And I was like, oh my gosh. I know what he just read to me. I can remember what he just read to me. And it was all connecting. I'm like about to cry. It was the most incredible feeling. It was like, oh my gosh, I am back. I am here. And so, oh wow, that was nothing short of what I would call then remarkable, but what I call now, as a Christian, I call that miraculous.
100%.
It is nothing short of miraculous. So after these 2 weeks, they had lowered my dose. I still had the Baclofen pump, but I remember I would go home and I'd read sports articles and other things from the newspaper, and it just made sense now. I could retain things. I could understand things. I could process them. I mean, it was just incredible. And so I just had this massive fire to just get back to normal.
Right.
So like, let me just recap. I exit the hospital. Still got the pump. I'm still, by the way, walking.
Better than you would without it.
Yeah, my spasticity is improved, and I'm sane.
I'd say that's more than a silver lining.
Yeah, I would say that too.
I would
that
say
too.
if that's what you had to go through to get back to their...
Yeah, and this happened for 6 months. This went on from mid to late November until I was discharged from the hospital on July 3rd of 2005. Mm-hmm. So
just before a year after...
Yeah, and remember that, like, my mind just would never stop. And so what I remember, though, is I would take a deep breath, and I would just kind of be able to listen to nothing. My mind was quiet. It was an incredible feeling. To this day, I still do that. I will recall that pain, and I can look back on how terrible it was, and I can say, just in a moment of such gratitude, thank God that I'm not in that place anymore. It was so awful. I was so mentally debilitated, and that superseded any kind of physical or cognitive disability. That was by far the worst. I would become a quadriplegic before that any day.
Yeah.
It was so awful.
Do you think in the long run that experience gave you maybe more tolerance for your physical disability? Like, do you ever, maybe you're experiencing a bad day physically, but you think, you know what, it could be a lot worse, and it was.
That's a great question. I think it gives me perspective on what really does matter. I think actually that's a great, if you want to call it coping skill, to think about. And actually, sometimes I have reflected on it before and said, even when I'm depressed or even if I'm anxious or it's just a bad spot or whatever life throws at you, like it does everyone sometimes, I can be like, well, I'm not that. Mm-hmm. So, and that allows you to kind of feel grounded, like you're not where you were. Because I'll be honest, that did give me fear. Mm-hmm. It gave me fear that it would come back, or fear that I wouldn't mentally be the same. It was that bad. It was almost like some trauma. There has probably been like certified trauma over it. I still think about it. It still affects me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you don't have PTSD from the stabbing.
Because I didn't see it happen.
Sure. But you probably do from this.
I don't necessarily want to diagnose it as PTSD or any kind of complex trauma, but I would say it is a traumatic experience. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to diagnose anything, but yes, there is trauma from that.
An ongoing.
Yes, ongoing trauma. Yes.
Okay. Something before knowing you, I didn't understand mental illness. As somebody who I've never dealt with depression. Otherwise, I've had some situational depression, but I don't. It's not something, and I'm so grateful that that's not something that I've had to deal with.
Me too. Right.
But not having gone through it at all, I didn't understand it. But knowing you and even seeing a little bit of just what you deal with anxiety and depression, at this stage, it's so low compared to what you have experienced, but even hearing about your experiences and stuff. So yeah, I can imagine what that might have done for you as well, especially in your field of social work and dealing with people who have such experiences with mental illness, and how much you can relate to those people, unlike I ever could.
Yes. First of all, I've always wanted to peer in your mind to be like, what's it like not to just go through depression or anxiety? What is that like? And I see it. I see it when you deal with things that are difficult. And I'm like always like, hey, this is going to lead to like depression, or this is going to lead to, no, you adapt very well. And I'm not going to go into this, but I know that I want to credit your relationship with Christ.
Oh, 100%. He has given me his peace and joy, literally my whole life.
And I feel people need to understand that I have seen in your life how Christ impacts you. And I see where you go when you face true hardships and true pain and suffering, and you go to God and you go to your friends, which God gives us fellowship. Mm-hmm. And you don't go to like the mental abyss. And I just think it's so interesting. And I have been very inspired by you. And I know you've also seen the progress that I've made. And to answer your second question on whether it's helped me to understand perspective on clients in social work, I used to have, when I was working in Arizona as a case manager at just a social work agency, we had a clinic and we had addicts, we had severe mental illness, we had acute mental illness, not so acute, homeless, everything. We had everything. And I remember when those people would come into my office, I could just feel their pain. I could understand their pain to an extent. And yes, what I went through in 2004 and 5 with the Baclofen, plus my injury, plus everything else, has absolutely given me perspective and empathy for those who suffer from extraordinarily mental illness and pain.
It's interesting, this topic, the psychosis and the Baclofen. Obviously I know about it. We've talked about it. But I would say this is probably the thing we've talked about the least.
Right.
And I can see how difficult it is for you to talk about it. It was a really, really horrible period in your life.
Right. Yeah, there are, what's interesting is that I remember some specific images I used to have in my head. I remember the experiences of pain and, I say songs. I remember people used to tell me, like, it's just a song in your head. I'm like, you don't quite get it. This stays in my mind for like 36 hours at a time, and I can't get rid of it, and it doesn't stop. Like, you're not quite understanding the extent of this. I don't even know, it would be really interesting to kind of process this with like some like neuropsych or like,
Sure.
Tell me what was going on, or like, what is this? I mean, I can give you some stuff like basic intrusive thoughts, all that, but man, it was just consuming fire in my mind. It was so wild. Yeah, and so it's difficult. I have to kind of relive it. And I was reading a article that discussed how mental pain can have traumatic effects, and they can have long-standing effects. And apparently once you enter bouts of like depression, or once you go into these states of mental anguish, it's hard to get out. It's more and more and more long-standing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I was reading that, and I was like, oh my gosh. So, but I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm there. But it did make me note how, yeah, I am afraid of having that again. I don't want to go there again.
Right.
No, I don't.
I can imagine.
But can you also, I also think about this. I didn't know Jesus back then.
I was just going to ask.
Right.
That. What do you think, obviously before and after becoming a Christian, accepting the Lord, what has been the difference there? Is there a hope that there wasn't before? Is there, tell me about it.
It's difficult to describe, like, understanding of God, but I can tell you that Jesus would have been right there with me. And to this day, you've seen me, I've gone through periods of anxiety or depression. And the fact that I can bring God into this, and that I can invite him, like, Lord, abide in me during this time, dwell with me. I need you to come into this pain with me. And the Holy Spirit can present him to me, and it can bring me just so much comfort and peace. And look, I've also been there in times when, it feels like God isn't even there at all. But once you're saved, you go through sanctification, which is the process that God takes you through. Because at this point, you are his. And as Philippians 1:6 discusses, like, God says, I have done a work in you, and I will not give up on you. But what I started, I will finish. And so he takes you or me or anyone who's in him and works. It is the faith in knowing that he's not going to leave me. What is it? When you go through such mental struggle and anguish, and you have nothing, you have absolutely nothing. You have no hope. You have no friend. There is nothingness, this dark just abyss of just nothing. And that is what I went through. But when you know that God is with you, whether you feel it at the time or whether you don't, in your heart, in a place where God resides, in the heart, in the soul of a person, the soul, that he's there, even if you don't feel it. God is so beyond your feelings. And I am a feeling type guy, and I've learned that. He's so far beyond feelings. He is the Alpha and Omega. He is the Lion of Judah. He is our King, who is at the right hand of God. And he's here for us, and he's coming back again for us. And we are his heirs, and we are his royal priesthood. And we are a part of this theodrama to where he says, go and fulfill what I want you to be. Be what I want you to be. I don't care about this past. I will use everything you have been through. to impact others in my name, to impact my kingdom. And that is his story of my life. It's not my story. It's his story. And I can go any day and say, where are you? What are you? What am I doing? And then he grounds me and gives me moments like this where it's like, I am just with you. Calm down. Like I'm right here. But that is his story in my life. And that is his that's what he does in each of us. And he puts each of us where he wants us to be. And he works out his will in us. And I do leave room for some freedom in hope where he can be like, are you willing? There is a sense in where he can, in some ways, he can only go as far as we will go.
Right.
He can do whatever he wants, but that's just the system he's set up.
But what an incredible redemption story that he can take this just tragedy in your life, this absolute hopeless time, and turn that around and use it. Take it away from you, first of all. That's not something you have to deal with.
I know what it's like to suffer.
Right.
And so
he pulled something so beautiful out of that.
Yes. And that is, in my opinion, the greatest explanation to justify suffering out of any worldview, whether you're atheist, humanist, agnostic, whatever. God takes suffering of extraordinary magnitude, even so much farther beyond what I've been through, and he can make it into something good. That is God. It's not that he causes it, but he's so good that he makes something out of it.
Right.
That's God. That's God in all his goodness.
Yeah.
Because that's all he is.
Thanks for joining us today and listening as we are exploring all the ways that God takes the things the enemy means for evil and turns them around to use them for our good and his glory. If you have questions, comments, feedback, ideas for us, or you just want to say hi, you can reach us at noweaponshallprosperpodcast@gmail.com. Talk to you again soon.